Tonight we'll leave the waking world behind and wander into a place of moonlit fairy tales, cozy dark fantasy and magical stories. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Leave a comment below and say hello. Whether you're tucked into bed, relaxing after a long day, or listening beneath a rainy window somewhere across the world, you're always welcome here. And if you found comfort in these stories, consider subscribing and joining our growing circle of dreamers, night wanderers, and fairy tale lovers. Now, dim the lights, settle beneath the blankets, and let your shoulders relax. This is the story of the widow who collected moonlight, a dark fairy tale for gentle nights. The house stood at the edge of the sea like something forgotten by time. It leaned slightly toward the cliffs as though listening to the waves below. Tall windows stared blankly across the black water, and pale ivy crawled up the stone walls in twisting patterns that looked almost alive beneath the moonlight. No one in the nearby village went near the manor after dark. Not because they believed it was haunted exactly, but because every night, long after the village candles had gone out, strange silver lights drifted through the upper windows. And sometimes, if the fog rolled in thick enough, people swore they heard singing from the cliffs. Soft singing, lonely singing, the kind that made your chest ache for reasons you couldn't explain. The woman who lived there was named Dorothea. At least that was the name the villagers remembered. Most simply called her the widow. No one knew her age anymore. She wore long black dresses stitched from velvet and lace that brushed the floorboards when she walked. Her dark hair fell nearly to her waist, streaked faintly with silver that glimmered under candlelight like frost. And every night, without fail, she collected moonlight. The villagers had seen her, standing alone at the cliffs with glass jars in her hands, while the ocean winds pulled at her sleeves. She would lift the jars toward the moon as though gathering rainwater, and somehow the jars would begin to glow, just enough to illuminate her pale face in the darkness, enough to make the villagers hurry home and lock their doors. But the truth was stranger than the stories, because Dorothea did not collect moonlight for magic. She collected it because she believed her husband was still trapped inside it. Many years earlier, before the manor became silent, before the sea swallowed entire pieces of the cliffs below, the house had once been filled with music. Her husband, Lucien, had been a composer. He played the piano in the ballroom every evening while candles flickered against the gold walls and rain whispered against the windows overlooking the sea. He had loved storms, especially the strange silver storms that rolled across the ocean during autumn, storms where the rain shimmered pale beneath the moonlight, storms that made the sea glow. Lucien used to say the ocean became thin during those nights, thin between worlds. Dorothea had laughed the first time he told her, but he only smiled softly and kissed her hand. "You'll hear it eventually," he'd whispered. "Hear what?" "The things the water remembers." At the time, she thought it was simply one of his strange poetic moods. But over the years, she began noticing things herself. Whispers beneath the waves, shapes moving beneath the cliffs, voices carried through fog when no one was there. And once, very late at night, she woke to find Lucien standing barefoot outside in the rain, staring toward the sea as though someone had called his name. When she touched his arm, he startled violently. then smiled, but his eyes looked distant, almost sleepwalking. "The sea was singing," he murmured. After that, he became quieter, more restless. He spent hours standing at the cliffs at night, listening. Sometimes he filled pages with frantic music before burning it in the fireplace before dawn. Other times he refused to speak at all. Still, Dorothea loved him deeply, enough that she ignored the growing fear curling quietly inside her chest, until the night the sea took him. It happened during the largest storm the village had seen in decades. The waves crashed so violently against the cliffs that windows rattled throughout the manor. The sky glowed silver black, and somewhere below the thunder, music drifted through the halls. Piano music. Dorothea woke instantly. Lucien's side of the bed was empty. The music floated faintly downstairs. Slow, beautiful, wrong. She wrapped herself in a robe and followed the sound through the dark manor. The ballroom doors stood open. Candles flickered violently despite the lack of wind, and Lucien sat at the piano alone, playing. Moonlight poured through the tall windows behind him in pale silver beams, but it wasn't his music that terrified her. It was the fact he was not touching the keys. His hands hovered inches above them, yet the piano continued playing on its own. Lucien stared ahead blankly, toward the sea, and then, very softly, someone sang outside the windows, a woman's voice, low and haunting. Dorothea felt every hair rise along her arms. Lucien stood immediately, not frightened, relieved, as though he had been waiting. "Lucien," Dorothea whispered. He turned toward her slowly, and for a moment his expression looked heartbreakingly sad. "I can hear her now," he said quietly. Then he walked toward the cliffs. Chased him through the storm, rain soaking through her clothes instantly as thunder shook the sky. The ocean below glowed silver beneath the darkness. The singing grew louder, not from one voice, hundreds beneath the water. Lucien stepped dangerously close to the cliff edge. "Lucien!" He looked back one final time and smiled gently. "I think she's lonely," he whispered. Then the cliff gave way beneath him, and he vanished into the sea. His body was never found. The villagers said the ocean took him. Some believed he slipped during the storm. Others whispered about sirens or curses or madness. But Dorothea knew what she had heard that night, and over time grief changed into obsession, because weeks after Lucien disappeared, she heard his voice, faintly, drifting through moonlight. One evening she noticed a strange silver glow caught inside an old glass jar left near the window. When she touched it, Dorothea. She nearly dropped it. The voice was distant, but unmistakably his. After that, she began collecting moonlight every night, and each jar held fragments. A whisper, a breath, a few broken words. Enough to keep hope alive, enough to destroy her slowly. Years passed, the manor grew colder. Dust settled over unused rooms. The village forgot what her laughter sounded like, but still she climbed the cliffs every night with empty jars in her hands. Still she searched the moonlight for pieces of him. until the night one of the jars finally answered back, clearly. The storm arrived just after midnight. Silver rain streaked the windows, while the sea churned violently below the cliffs. Dorothea sat alone in the ballroom, surrounded by hundreds of glowing jars, tiny moons flickering softly in the darkness. Some whispered occasionally, most remained silent. The piano sat untouched in the corner, and yet a single note rang softly through the room. Dorothea froze. Another note followed, then another, slowly. A melody emerged. Lucien's melody, the very first song he ever wrote for her. Her hands trembled. The room felt colder suddenly. The jars brightened all at once. Silver light flooded the ballroom walls. And then one jar near the piano glowed brighter than the others. Brighter and brighter until cracks splintered across the glass. Dorothea approached carefully, her breath shallow. Inside the jar, moonlight swirled like liquid silver. Then, Dorothea. His voice clear this time. She dropped to her knees beside the jar instantly. Lucien! The light inside shifted violently, and for one impossible moment, a silhouette formed within it. His silhouette. Her heart nearly stopped. Tears blurred her vision. I knew it, she whispered shakily. I knew you were still here. The figure lifted its head slowly, but something felt wrong. Not frightening exactly, just empty, like a reflection trying to imitate a person. Come to the shore, the voice whispered softly. Dorothea's stomach tightened. Outside, thunder rolled across the sea. The silhouette flickered strangely. Its movements unnatural. Too slow. Too fluid, like something underwater pretending to be human. Still, it sounded like him. After all these years, it sounded like him. Lucien, she whispered. The figure smiled faintly. Come find me. Then the jar shattered. Moonlight spilled across the floor like water, and every candle in the ballroom went dark at once. The cliffs were waiting. The sea below glowed silver beneath the storm. Dorothea stood at the edge in her black velvet gown while rain lashed against her skin. Far below, shapes moved beneath the waves, dozens of them, pale figures drifting slowly through the water, watching. And somewhere among them, she saw him, Lucien, standing impossibly still beneath the surface. His face tilted upward toward her, smiling softly, waiting. The ocean began singing again, gentle, almost beautiful. Dorothea stepped closer to the edge. The wet stones crumbled beneath her shoes. Lucien lifted one hand slowly. Come closer. For one terrible moment, she wanted to, more than anything, the years of loneliness, the endless grief, the aching silence of the manor. It all pulled her forward, toward the sea, toward him, toward rest. But then, very faintly, she remembered something, a memory buried beneath sorrow. Lucien laughing beside the fireplace years ago, warm candlelight against his skin, his real smile, his real voice, not this cold imitation rising from black water. And suddenly she understood. whatever waited below, whatever wore his face. It was not her husband. The sea remembered people, but it did not return them whole. The waves crashed violently below. The singing sharpened, hungry now. Dorothea stepped backward. Immediately the figures beneath the water twisted unnaturally. Dozens of pale faces turning upward together. The storm roared, and for the first time in years, Dorothea turned away from the sea. By morning, the storm had passed. The villagers later claimed they saw hundreds of silver lights drifting from the manor windows before dawn, and after that night, the glowing jars disappeared. No more silver lights flickered through the halls. No more singing echoed from the cliffs. But sometimes, very late at night, travellers still claim they see a woman in black walking quietly along the shore beneath the moon, not collecting moonlight anymore, only watching the sea carefully, as though listening for something beneath the waves. And occasionally, if the tide is low enough, the faint sound of piano music drifts across the water before vanishing into the fog. The end. This is the story of the Swan Maiden of Hollowmere. There is a lake hidden deep within the northern woods where the fog never fully lifts. Even in summer, mist drifts slowly across the water like breath over glass. The trees surrounding it are ancient willow trees, their silver branches hanging low enough to touch the surface of the lake. And scattered along the shoreline grow dead roses, blackened petals that never fall apart, as though the lake itself keeps them preserved. The villagers nearby call the place Hollowmere. No one visits after dusk, no one speaks loudly there, and no one, under any circumstances, follows the swans. Because every few years, one disappears. The stories say the swans of Hollowmere are not swans at all. They are maidens, cursed long ago beneath the moon, bound to the lake and the fog that surrounds it. At night, they shed feathers instead of tears, and if one leaves a feather on your windowsill, it means the lake has chosen you. Most people throw the feathers away. They burn them. They refuse the invitation. But one autumn evening, beneath cold silver rain, a feather appeared on Lenora's window. It was enormous, soft white touched with silver blue. Its edges shimmered faintly in the candlelight. Lenora stared at it for a long time. She lived alone in a small cottage near the edge of the woods, where the forest crept close enough to whisper against the walls during storms. The cottage smelled faintly of lavender, old books, and rain-soaked wood. It was quiet there, too quiet sometimes. Lenora had grown used to silence. Years ago, she had loved someone deeply. The kind of love that changes the shape of your future before you realize it's happening. And then one winter, they were simply gone. Since then, Lenora had lived gently, carefully, like someone afraid to wake something sleeping inside herself. She should have burned the feather. Everyone knew that. Instead, she touched it. The moment her fingers brushed the silver strands, she heard singing, soft, distant, mournful. The sound drifted through the rain like a memory trying to return, and somewhere beyond the trees, something answered. That night, Lenora could not sleep. The feather rested beside her bed, glowing faintly beneath moonlight. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw water, black water, silver fog, and pale swans moving soundlessly through the mist. Just before dawn, she left the cottage. The woods were colder than they should have been. Fog curled around her ankles as she walked. The deeper she moved into the forest, the quieter the world became. Even the wind seemed afraid to speak there. And then the trees opened, Hollowmere. The lake stretched endlessly beneath the fog, smooth as black glass. Silver mist drifted low across the surface. The dead roses along the shore shimmered faintly with frost, and floating near the center of the lake were swans, dozens of them. Their feathers glowed pale blue beneath the moonlight. They moved too gracefully to be ordinary creatures, almost human. Lenora stepped closer. The singing returned immediately, soft enough to ache. One swan lifted its head and looked directly at her. Its eyes were not animal eyes, they were human. The swan drifted slowly towards shore. Mist curled around it as it moved. Without warning, the water around it began to glow. Feathers dissolved into silver light, wings folded inward, and rising slowly from the lake was a woman. She was impossibly pale. Her hair flowed white as moonlit water tangled softly with silver feathers. A gown made of translucent fabric clung to her skin like drifting mist, and behind her, ghostly swan wings shimmered faintly before fading away. Lenora could not move. The woman stepped onto the shore barefoot. Black water dripped from the hem of her gown without sound. "You came," she whispered. Her voice sounded fragile, like something not used for many years. Lenora swallowed carefully. "I don't know why." The woman smiled sadly. "No one ever does." Her name was Illyria, the Swan Maiden of Hollowmere. Long ago, she explained, she and her sisters had once belonged to a kingdom that no longer existed, a kingdom swallowed by grief, betrayal, and winter. The curse came during the final night of its fall, a punishment woven from sorrow. Now they belonged to the lake, to the fog, to loneliness itself. "We remain here," Illyria said softly, "until someone remembers how to love us enough to see us fully again." Lenora looked toward the lake. The swans drifted silently beneath the mist, beautiful, trapped. "You leave feathers on windows," Lenora whispered. Illyria nodded. "Only for the lonely ones." The words settled painfully inside Lenora's chest, because she understood immediately. The lake did not call to happiness, it called to emptiness, to people carrying too much silence inside them. Over the following nights, Lenora returned to Hollowmere again and again. The forest no longer frightened her. The fog parted for her now. She sat beside the lake, listening to Illyria speak about the kingdom beneath the water. Marble halls flooded with moonlight, ballrooms where ghost music still echoed through drowned corridors, gardens of silver lilies blooming beneath the lake bed, and slowly, something inside Lenora softened. The silence she carried no longer felt empty beside Illyria. It felt understood. One night, while silver rain drifted across the lake, Lenora asked the question she had been avoiding. "Are you dead?" Illyria looked toward the black water. The swans moved silently behind her. "Not entirely," she said. The answer felt somehow sadder than death. As autumn deepened, Hollowmere changed. The dead roses along the shore began blooming again, dark crimson spreading slowly through black petals. The fog glowed faintly silver at night, and Illyria's laughter, rare and soft, began appearing more often. The curse was weakening because Hollowmere had not needed a saviour. It had needed remembrance, tenderness, someone willing to stay long enough to see sorrow without fearing it. But curses rarely loosen without demanding something in return. The final night arrived beneath a full moon. The lake glowed brighter than ever before. The swans circled slowly through silver fog, and Illyria stood waiting at the shore. "The lake will release us tonight," she whispered. Lenora's heart tightened painfully. "But only if I leave it forever." "And if you don't?" Lenora asked quietly. Illyria looked toward the black water. "Then Hollowmere keeps me." The silence between them felt enormous. Lenora realized then how deeply she had come to love this strange, haunted creature of fog and feathers. The way moonlight loves dark water. Illyria stepped closer. Her cold fingers brushed Lenora's cheek. "You reminded me I was still alive," she whispered. Then the lake began to glow. The mist rose around them like silver silk. The swans cried out softly into the night, and one by one, their feathers dissolved into light. The curse broke quietly. Without thunder, without spectacle, only fog. And the sound of wings finally free. When dawn came, Hollowmere was empty. The swans were gone, the mist had lifted, and the dead roses lining the shore bloomed pale silver beneath the morning sun. Lenora returned to her cottage alone. But the loneliness no longer lived inside her the same way. Sometimes, during quiet winter nights, she still hears wings outside her window. Soft, gentle, familiar. And once in a while, a silver feather appears on her windowsill. The end. This is the story of The Night Garden Where Lost Hearts Bloom. There is a garden that appears only at midnight. Not every midnight. Only the quiet ones, the lonely ones. The nights when the fog hangs low over the earth and the moon looks pale enough to bruise. No road leads there, no map remembers it. And yet, people find it sometimes, usually when their hearts have gone missing. The garden waits behind an iron gate hidden deep within a sleeping forest. The gate is old black metal curled with silver vines and roses made of thorns. By daylight there is nothing there, only trees and mist. But when midnight arrives, the gate appears, and beyond it, the garden blooms. Black roses open beneath moonlight. Silver flowers breathe in the dark. Long pale vines climb crumbling marble statues whose faces have long since worn away. Everything there glows softly, just enough to feel alive. The flowers in the garden are not ordinary flowers. Each one blooms from a forgotten love, a grief, a longing, a heartbreak, someone buried too deeply. The roses are the saddest. The fairies say they bloom from love that never had a chance to finish becoming something. And in the center of the garden, beneath a silver tree whose branches drip glowing petals, lives the fairy who tends them all. Her name is Valentina. Her wings are thin and luminous like stained glass held beneath moonlight. Silver veins run through them like cracks. When she moves, soft dust falls from her wings like shimmering ash. She is very old, older than the garden, older than grief. And she has spent centuries caring for broken hearts. Not healing them. No, the garden does not heal. It simply gives sorrow somewhere beautiful to rest. One autumn night, beneath a moon hidden behind clouds, someone came to the gate. Her name was Mariana. She wore a dark velvet coat damp with mist, her boots silvered with rainwater. She looked tired, not the kind of tired sleep fixes, the deeper kind. The kind that settles quietly inside a person until they no longer notice it living there. Mariana had once believed herself capable of love, but heartbreak changes shape over time. At first it burns, then it aches, and eventually it becomes silence. She had not cried in years, had not wanted anyone in years. Her heart had become something distant to her, like an abandoned room she no longer entered. That night she had wandered into the forest without really meaning to. The world had felt unbearably heavy. And then she saw the gate. Black iron, silver vines, moonlit roses curling around the bars. Somewhere beyond it, she heard singing. Soft, almost like a lullaby. The gate opened before she touched it. The garden beyond seemed endless. Dark flowers glimmered beneath drifting silver fog. Tiny lights moved among the vines. Fairies, not bright, cheerful creatures like storybooks promised. These fairies were quieter. Their gowns flowed like smoke. Their wings shimmered in shades of pearl and moon silver. They looked like creatures made from midnight itself. And none of them seemed surprised to see her. One fairy drifted toward her, slowly. Valentina, you've come a long way carrying something so heavy, she said softly. Her voice sounded like rain against old windows. Mariana frowned slightly. I'm not carrying anything. The fairy tilted her head. Then she touched Mariana's chest gently, right over her heart. Yes, Valentina whispered, you are. The garden shifted around them, flowers slowly opening in the dark, silver moths drifting through the air, black petals falling soundlessly onto stone paths. Mariana followed Valentina deeper into the garden. They passed pools filled with glowing water that reflected memories instead of faces. They passed vines blooming with tiny glass flowers that chimed softly when touched by wind. They passed sleeping foxes with silver eyes curled beneath thorn bushes. Everything in the garden felt alive, not in a frightening way, in a lonely way, as if the garden understood sorrow too well to fear it. Eventually they reached the silver tree at the garden's center. Its branches stretched high into the fog, dripping, glowing petals that dissolved before touching the ground. And beneath it grew a single black rose, larger than the others. Its petals shimmered dark crimson beneath moonlight. Valentina looked at it quietly. This one belongs to you. Mariana stared. I don't understand. The fairy knelt beside the flower. This rose bloomed the night you stopped allowing yourself to feel. Something tightened painfully inside Mariana's chest. The fairy touched one of the petals. And suddenly, the garden changed. Memories bloomed around her, warm hands, laughter. A voice she had tried not to remember. The feeling of once being loved so deeply it frightened her. Mariana staggered slightly. The grief hit quietly, not violent or cruel, just honest. Tears filled her eyes before she realized what was happening. "I buried all of this," she whispered. Valentina nodded gently. Yes. The garden grew still around them. Even the moths seemed quieter now. "You thought forgetting would hurt less," the fairy said softly. Mariana looked down at the rose. Its dark petals trembled slightly in the wind, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to grieve. Not just the person she had lost, but herself. The softer version, the hopeful version, the version that still believed love could stay. Silver rain began falling through the garden, soft and warm. The fairies moved silently through it, gathering tears in crystal bowls, not wasting any of it, because nothing in the night garden was ever treated as ugly. Not grief, loneliness, or longing. Everything was allowed to bloom. Mariana stood beneath the silver tree for what felt like hours, maybe days. Time moved strangely there, like the garden itself was dreaming. Eventually, the rain stopped. The black rose before her had changed. Tiny silver flowers now curled among its thorns. Valentina smiled faintly. "It's lighter now." Mariana touched the petals carefully, and something inside her opened. Not all at once, but enough to let warmth back in someday. Enough to remember that feeling deeply was not weakness. The garden gate appeared once more at dawn, fog curling beyond them, the world waiting quietly on the other side. "You may return whenever your heart grows heavy again," Valentina said. Mariana looked back one last time, at the glowing roses, at the silver moths, at the fairies drifting softly through the dark. Then she stepped through the gate. When the sun rose fully, the garden disappeared. But sometimes, on lonely autumn nights, when the fog hangs low and silver rain taps softly against windows, Mariana swears she can still smell black roses in the air. And somewhere deep in the forest, beneath moonlight and mist, they say, the night garden still blooms. The end.